Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's Parsha Shiur. Parsha's Tazria. So we haven't got a double Sedra this year. It's a leap year, and the Sedras in Vayikra are separate. And Tazria will focus on three very interesting ideas. Mitzvah Hashem, next week we'll have the Pesach Haggadah Shiur, and then we'll have a little break for Pesach, and then resume the Mitzvah Hashem after that. So the first idea, Parsha's Tazria, if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com and I'll send you the handout. The Parsha begins with the laws of childbirth. The Pasuk says, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar, Daber b'nei Yisrael Lemar, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zachar, v'toma shivas yomim. So she gives birth to a boy, she is tummy for 7 days, V'yom hashmini yimal b'sar losa, he has the bris milah, and then shloshim yom u'shloshis yomim, for 33 days, teishev b'mei tahara, they're called yemei tahara, and then for a girl it's 14 days and 66 days. Now, Pasuk Vav, of imlois yemei tahara, and in the completion of these tahara days, leven or levas, whether it's a boy or a girl, tovi keves ben shnosoi, she brings karbonos. Now, what does she bring? She brings keves ben shnosoi la'olah, a keves, a lamb, for a year old as a carbon olah, or ben yoina oisar lechatos. And she has a choice to either bring a ben yoina. A ben yoina is a dove. A tur is another type of bird, a turtle dove. Lechatos as her carbon chatos, a pesach oil moed l'kohen. V'kriva lifnei Hashem, v'chiper aleh v'tara b'mokar dameh, etc., etc. Those turas hayoledes. Now, the Bal HaTurim notes a very interesting insight to the exact expression in the Pasuk. See, the Pasuk says, Ben Yona Oitar. Says the Bal HaTurim, B'chol Mokum Makdim Turim B'lei Yona. Always the Torah puts the turtle dove, before the B'nei Yona. Chutz Mikan. For some reason here, the Ben Yona comes first before the turtle dove, before the Torah. Why is that? Says the Bal HaTurim, because the Yoledes, the lady who has given birth, only brings one. And if she finds a Yona, lo yikach tar, then it's much better that she brings the Yona, the dove, and not the tar. Ben zugay misabel olov. Because if she were to bring the turtle dove, the way of the world of turtle doves is that its partner will mourn her. Mourn the partner, the other one, if you take one of them. Ve'enam is davig la'ach, and it won't go and sort of find another mate. And therefore, says the Torah, since the halacha with the yoledes is that you only take one, better to take the ben yona, because that will cause less sort of emotional damage, if you like, to the animal, because he will go and just marry somebody else. That's how doves work. But when it comes to the turtle doves, apparently they don't do that. And therefore, if you were to take one, you're going to take one and leave one without the other, with the partner, and therefore that is considered, cruel or whatever you want to call it. And that's based, the Bal HaTurim, based on a Pesikta Zutra in Vayikra. Now, what do you see? You see from here a lesson in sensitivity, and I saw this in Rabbi Yaakov Bender's Sefer. He makes reference to this Bal HaTurim, and the lesson of sensitivity that the Torah highlights, that you specifically get the Ben Yona first to spare the Torah the pain of its partner being taken, is specifically for a Yoledes. Because a Yoledes has just given birth and she is now embarking, together with her husband, on a new project of educating this new neshama. And therefore, one of the things that she needs to bear in mind is a lesson in sensitivity. That is a very important and powerful lesson for this new mother, and the concept of being sensitive is very important. The Alter of Slobodka would say the following: that sometimes we get so caught up in doing mitzvahs that we lose, we sort of tread on people's toes on the way. So he quotes an example, that the person can sometimes want to go daven the tekeva, and you daven. I've been just came back from Poland a few weeks ago, so we've been to loads of different kfarim. So it's a very powerful thing. You go to kfarim of holy tzaddikim, and you can daven there, and you can pour your heart out. But if a person does it in an insensitive way, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. Why? For example, says the Alter of Slobodka, if your tzitzis are out, then you are mocking the person at whose place you're davening. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch in the next box, the pasuk says, the Mechaber says in Hilchos Tzitzis, "Mutzer likonis beis hakvaros." You're allowed to go into a beis hakvaros for who lavish tzitzis. You can wear your tzitzis in the cemetery. For who shelo nigra al hakvaros, so long as they're not exposed, they're not out, literally dragging on the kvaros. Nigra al hakvaros, that means, if they're if they're exposed, if they're under your coat or whatever, that's not a problem. But if they're exposed, then also mishum loeg lerosh. Now that's a halacha. It's based on a pasuk in Mishlei in Yuzayin, that the pasuk in Mishlei says you can't mock those who are impoverished, and the Shulchan Aruch quotes this as a source for not exposing your tzitzis in a cemetery because you're making fun of the dead person. You're saying I can perform mitzvahs and you can't, and that's considered loeg lerosh. You're mocking the dead person. Just by the way, one of the things that emerges when we go to Poland, almost the first stop, we fly to Warsaw, and invariably the first stop is the Warsaw Cemetery. And for many of the boys, they've never actually been to a Beis HaKvaros. So if they have, once and they don't remember the details, so you actually have to talk to them about the hanhag of how to behave in a Beis HaKvaros, and various halachas and certain respect, and taking your tzitzis, and kahanim, etc., etc. But one thing I tell the boys is this halacha, and I say to them, imagine you landed in Warsaw Airport and you're a super rich person, so you can afford, instead of getting on a coach and making the half an hour trip, whatever it is, you get your own personal helicopter, and you can drive and you can fly and land next to the cave of the Netziv and Reb Chaim, or the Chem Das Shlomo, wherever you're going, the Mojitz Rebbe, and all the other Rebbes there. No problem with that. If there was a helicopter pad, you could park there. If you were to go to Warsaw Airport and pick up your red Ferrari and drive there and park just next to the aquarium, there's no loeg lerosh over there. The only loeg lerosh is tzitzis, because in the Olam HaEmes they're not worried about the Ferrari or the private jet or anything else. The only thing they're worried about is the opportunity that we have and they don't, i.e. performing mitzvahs. That's what Rosh means, impoverished, and that's what really counts. Anyway, and therefore, says the Alter of Slobodka, to be insensitive on somebody else's cheshbon when you're davening and your tzitzis are out, then that takes away from your own tefillahs. And one has to be mindful of that. Rabbi Bender tells a lovely story of Rav Yaakov Palm. Rav Palm, with the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das, many years when his children were young, he was once walking somewhere with his children, and he finds a $5 bill on the sidewalk, on the pavement. And the kids are ecstatic. This is going back many decades. $5 was worth something, especially from a home where money was not very plentiful. So he explained to the kids, were very excited, they wanted to take it, and he explained to the kids that you're allowed to take it. It hasn't got a simon, it's hefka now, and therefore you can take it. Fine, they took the money home, but he put the $5 bill and he put it on the shelf. So the kid said, well, can we now take it? Can we spend it? What can we buy? So he says, look, halachically it's ours, and we will use it, but not yet. Because right now there's someone out there who's lost the $5 bill. We don't know who it is. It's impossible to return it to him. We've got no idea. There's no simon. But let's just wait a few days just to tap into his pain. He's lost $5. Interesting chinuch. But that's really what this Balaturim is saying. That the Torah here, Dafka says you take the Ben Yonah and not the Torah, because the Torah will be distressed at the fact that its partner is taken away, because here, with the Yoledas, you only take one and not the pair of birds. Okay, let's move on. The next idea I came across in the writings of Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein in his wonderful Sefer on Chumash. He quotes a fabulous idea of the Shem Mishmur. You see, the main body of the Parsha deals with the halachas of tzaras, of Nagaim. And this is a very complicated area of halacha. It's a whole Masechta in Taharas of Nagaim. And let's just explore. He makes some very interesting observations. So take a look at the next box, paragraph 2. This is in Perek Yud Gimel. Vayidaba Hashem al Moshe ve'el Aaron Leimer. Adam kiyeh ba'er b'saroi, a person who has on his flesh se'es, oy sapachas, oy baheres. Now those are the key words in Masechta of Nagaim. Se'es, sapachas, and baharis. We'll come back to that in a second. V'hoy ba'er b'saroi l'nega tzaras, and he has these Nagaim, the nega of tzaras, the affliction of tzaras on his body. V'huva el Aaron HaKohen, he's brought Aaron HaKohen, or one of his children. V'roa HaKohen es hanega, etc., etc. and Vero HaKohen V'Timei Oisei. Now, what is this Se'es, Sapachas, Baheres? What are these terms? Take a look at the very first Mishnah in Maseches Negoim, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Maros Negoim Shnayim Shehin Arbo. There are actually two types of Negoim which have subcategories. So if you look at the Bar Tanura on this Mishnah, Maros Negoim Shnayim, Ksivi B'Kro Behedja, Se'es or Baheres. These are two categories of Negoim. One is called Se'es and one is called Baheres. And they're different shades of white. The Mishnah goes on to say that Baheres is Azor Kashelik. It's as bright as snow. It's a very bright shade of white. Se'es is Krum Beitza. It's a slightly lighter shade, a more sort of a less bright shade of white. But they're different shades of white. So those are the two. Shnayim Shehin Arbo. They're two Torah categories which actually have two subcategories midrabanan. If you look at the next line in the Bar Tanura, Shehin Arbo, Yesh lechal rabos oid shnayim acherim. You can include two further types of nega, delo ksivi b'kra, which are not explicit in the Torah. Vehein tolda de se'es v'tolda de baheres. They're subcategories of those two. The subcategories is what's known as a tolda of se'es and a tolda of baheres. The marbina nuhu mispachas. She'ein safachas shem nega and loshen tefela. The safachas means it's a subcategory, it's subordinate to the main category, and therefore each one has a subcategory which has various names. But that's what a sapachas is, the tolda of the two of those two main negoim. Now, what's very interesting is these are the three key terms that you come across in Hilchos Negoim: se'es, sapachas, and baheres. Says the Shem Mishmul, and this is Rabbi Bernstein quotes this, that these three expressions, se'es, sapachas, and baheres, allude to the three primary reasons why a person may be drawn to speaking Lashon Hara. How so? Well, let's take a look. Se'es relates to the word nissa, to be elevated, to raise up, to carry. A person sometimes feels that he needs to expose the faults of others or to speak negatively about another person, and thereby he can raise himself up higher than them. That's what se'es is. He speaks negatively about another person because I can elevate myself falsely at his expense. That's what se'es refers to. Sapachas relates to the word safiach. Safiach means an attachment. And a person may feel that gossip and spreading slander and speaking Lashon Hara about another person will enable me to attach myself to another peer group, to sort of ingratiate myself to a certain circle of friends. That's another motive. Credibility, yeah, I know inside information, I know something. So whatever it may be, I'm speaking about, whoever it may be, in order to ingratiate myself, to attach myself to another peer group. So that's what the word sapachas could allude to. And the third one, baheres, which is an expression of bahir, which means light, bright, or illuminate. And again, a person could feel erroneously that my critical analysis and a breakdown, my sort of armchair psychology, that my breakdown of another person's character will reveal me as possessing some sort of enlightened, illuminated insight. So these three, se'es, sapachas, and baheres, all relate to reasons, to motives why a person will be drawn to speaking Lashon Hara. And that's really what the three terms relate to. Now the reality is that it often has exactly the opposite effect. That a person who speaks slander reveals himself to be unkind and to actually be quite insecure. And the reality is that the people you're trying to ingratiate yourself to will actually be suspicious of you, and you will actually be an object of derision amongst those that you interact and you're trying to impress. So really, these three negoim, se'es, sapachas, and baheres, like I say, relate to the three reasons why a person may be drawn to speaking Lashon Hara. Se'es, he feels the need to raise himself up over other people, to expose their faults so I can sort of make myself bigger. Or sapachas, which means attach, that I can attach myself to a certain group by speaking bad of others. Or baheres, to sort of make out that I'm sort of illuminated, I'm insightful and possessing sort of wisdom, and therefore I can make this sort of critical analysis or really a character assassination about another person. Okay, fascinating insights of the Shem Yishmael. Let's finish off with one final idea, and this is also an idea I saw in Rabbi Bender's Sefer. This is in Parsha's Tazria, in Perek Yud Gimel, in the same Perek. Now, in the pasuk after the one I just mentioned, it says Odom Kieh Ba'ar B'Saros Se'esos Sapachos B'Heres, these three terms, and then pasuk Gimel. There's a redundancy in this pasuk, which is a fascinating redundancy, because the pasuk says V'ro HaKohen Es HaNega Ba'ar HaBoso. The kohen sees the nega. A person is afflicted with this blemish, and he goes to the kohen. And then later in the same pasuk, and the kohen sees it and is metameh him. So you've got the words v'ro'ah hakohen twice in that pasuk. He's seen it. Why is he seeing it twice? It just seems blatant when you now look at it, but it's easy to pass by. But why does it say v'ro'ah hakohen twice? V'ro'ah hakohen is hanega, ba'ar basar v'sar basar nehafach lovan amar hanega, etc. V'ro'ah hakohen v'timei. Why does it say it twice? So the Meshech Chochmah addresses the issue. Take a look at the last box on the page. V'ro'ah hakohen is hanega. V'ro'ah hakohen. Hakfelus mavua v'ayin b'teras kohanim. Okay, this is not, of course, redundant. The teras kohanim addresses that point. However, says the Meshech Chochmah, aside from what the teras kohanim says, yitochin al derech, we can explain through some drush a different idea. Shehakavona sheyires hanega im hi ru'uya l'tmeya. There are two sights, there are two sort of observations that the kohen has to make. One is the first, just to see, is this Tomei? He looks at the nega, is this Tomei? Hu sheyesh b'siman tumah seir lovan. Has he got the seir lovan, the white hair, which will make it, that's the siman tumah for this particular nega. Then, v'ro'ohu hakohen, he sees it again, sheyira hakohen alo ish imroyu l'tumasoi. He's looking not so much at the nega, he's looking at the bigger picture. He's looking at this man, is this appropriate right now to make him Tomei? What does that mean? If the nega is Tomei, then that's it. Why are you looking at the wider picture? What does that refer to? For example, im chosen, if the man has just got married, noisin lo kol shiva yemei hamishte. Rashi brings this in this week's Edra, that if he's in the Sheva Brachos week, he's just got married, you don't actually have to proclaim him Tomei, and in fact you shouldn't. You should wait until the end of the Sheva Brachos, because the tumah only kicks in when the kohen declares him to be Tomei. Another example is, the kohen can come to the house. He sees that sign on the wall has spread. This is bad news. But what will he do? Before he says anything, he proclaims it Tomei. He'll tell the owner of the house, take all your kelim out, and then you can proclaim it Tomei. So there is a bigger picture which he needs to see before he can actually proclaim it Tomei. V'chein beregel. Another example is a chosen taking out the klicheres from the house, the vest, the earthenware which cannot be toveled in a mikveh. V'chein beregel noisin lo kol yemos haregel. You don't want to make him in Tomei and he's got to sit chutz l'machane for a whole week, erev Pesach. The timing will be a disaster. Shalol arviv simchosu. You shouldn't disturb his simcha. V'drachehu darchei noam. The Torah is beautiful and pleasant. V'lochein v'ra'ahu eich. There's a second v'ra'ahu. You're looking at the bigger picture. You take a step back. V'zeu she'omar b'yom herois yesh yom she'iyat haroya hu inyan mitzad hazman lo she'im lefi tchunos etzorech yischaber sim anoshim v'chiyitzi b'zeh ein haroya b'y. If he, for whatever reason, he can't be aside from people, you can hold off. Rak kashu inyan mitzad hazman binazes. Understand this. So you see that the two v'ro'ah hakohen, one is to actually see if this is Tomei or not, and the second one is to see the bigger picture. And with that, Rabbi Benzer, there's lots of. It's very important for a rav, for a mechanech, for a person to see a little bit beyond the question that comes in front of you. So he tells a story, for example, of there was a Rosh Yeshiva who died tragically very young. He was 46. Rabbi Eliezer Geldzala, I think you pronounce it. Yisrael Bess has written a biography of him. He was a very charismatic, young, vibrant Rosh Yeshiva, and he was once he once came to the yeshiva, and the mashgiach told him that he had to expel a boy, he had to send the boy home for a day or two, whatever it was. So he suddenly saw that the Rosh Yeshiva, this Rabbi Eliezer Galzala, his face like turned color, changed color. So the mashgiach said, but we've discussed this before, if the boy does in the yeshiva, does this violation, we have to send him home. So the Rosh Yeshiva said to him, yeah, but do you know the home he comes from? Do you know what his home life is like? This will be a disaster to send him home. Yes, generally speaking, this is the rule of this yeshiva. But do you know about this boy, what his home life is like? If you don't see the fuller picture, then it will be a disaster to send this kid home. Quickly go and call and say we've made a mistake and he needs to come straight back. Now, whatever was going on in that home, I don't know. But he knew that this was bad news to send him home. You've got to just see the bigger picture. He tells another story that in his Rosh Yeshiva of Darchei Torah of Yaakov Bender. So they have, you're a big yeshiva, you've got a big deficit. You've got to have an annual fundraising campaign. So one of the things they do for fundraising is they have what's called a bike-a-thon. Right? It's a bit like we have here in London, the KEF cycle, right? So there are lots of, here it's men, I think, whatever, but there it's the kids in the yeshiva, they do a bike-a-thon, and they cycle whatever it is, and they raise sponsor money, like hospital kosher meals, we're getting knocks on the door at the moment, so something like that. So this is an annual thing, and all the rebbes in each class try and encourage the students to get excited about it. One time Rabbi is walking in the corridor, some years ago, and he sees a kid crying. So he goes up to him, what's the matter? So the kid's saying, look, my Rebbe keeps talking about this bike-a-thon, and he said it's just so painful for him because he doesn't own a bike. He'd love to do it, he'd love to cycle, but he doesn't own a bike. And Rabbi very bravely admitted, he said, we'd overlooked that. He said, now we've corrected it. Now any kid who hasn't got a bike, now there are people queuing up to sponsor and to buy bikes for kids who haven't got bikes, etc. But sometimes you can do something which is very positive. You can have a bike-a-thon, you can raise money for the yeshiva, it's a sponsored cycle, but you've got to see the fuller picture. And if you don't see the full picture, you're going to get kids crying in the corridor. So it's a certain sensitivity that is needed. So either way, we've got here three very interesting ideas in Parsha's Tazria. Number one, sensitive chinuch, why it is dafka with the Yerledes that here, which is the exception, the Ben Yonah comes before the Torah. Why? Because the Ben Yonah will move on, will be okay. But the Torah, because you only take one bird, you take away the partner, then it's going to be very distressing for the remaining partner. The lesson of sensitivity, and that's the Alta of Slobodka, going to the Beis HaKvaros and sort of not being wary of Loeg LaRosh and Rav Palm with his $5 bill on the sidewalk. Then you have the Lashon Hara, that insight of the Shem Shmuel, those terms, which are very technical terms in Hilchos Negoim, Seis, Sapachas, Baheres, but each one says the Shem Shmuel could relate to a reason why a person could be drawn to speaking Lashon Hara, which is the primary cause of tzaras. And then lastly, the idea of the Meshech Chochmah, that V'roa Kohen, he's got to see twice. A, the individual nega, is this or is this not Tomei? And then he's got to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that maybe he's a chosen, maybe there are kalim in the house, maybe it's before Yom Tov. He's got to see the bigger picture, and he can hold off from actually declaring it Tomei because he's got to see the bigger picture. And those are the two stories of Rabbi Eliezer Galzala, I think, and that bike-a-thon in Yeshiva Darchei Torah. Okay, we'll leave it there.